Welcome back to Bets of the North, your gambling hit here on the Kings of the North feed. Doug Lesmerises and Tyler Shoemaker and T. Shoe. The season is approaching. We are not doing week 0 bets, though. Or will you be doing any week 0 bets in your actual life? We just don't have any northern teams for week 0. Plus, everything's in Ireland. I don't know. We're just not doing it here. Are you doing it?
I put in a couple bets earlier in the summer, but lines have moved so much since then. It really wouldn't be, which is actually something we're going to talk about here later in the show, is kind of how to read the line movement and when that should put you on or off of a bet. So we'll talk about that later. But because of the line movement, I wouldn't feel comfortable giving out any plays at this point.
Okay, that's fine. It's not the real thing. I get it. People are excited and you want to grab onto every little bit of Georgia Tech, Florida State that you can. What we are talking about are a couple things here. We're going to talk about live betting. We're going to talk about reading lines as they move. And we're going to specifically talk about a bunch of betting lines on games later in the year and whether you should be betting now on games that might be happening in week 2, week 3, week 5, week 7, week 8, week 14, whether that makes sense and what should go into your thinking there. And then at the end, we actually have a very big announcement to make about something that we will be doing weekly here on Bets of the North. So stick with us for the end. It's something fun that we're excited about, but we want to get to some of the actual games now. And Tishu, that means we're going to talk about betting games weeks ahead of time. What is the general rule on this? And is it mostly about reading line movement to decide whether you should do something now rather than wait for the week of the game?
Yeah, I think so. And admittedly, full transparency, I don't bet a ton of these ahead of time. I think the strategy there should be, for instance, as we discussed on our futures podcast, my numbers are low on Nebraska. So keeping that in mind, like if you see value in my number on a Nebraska game early, it's like, oh, well, TSI is low on Nebraska and it's still showing value on them here. Maybe I'll buy them at this point because that probably means the line's going to move in their favor, over the course of the season as we get closer to that game. So you get a ton of closing line value, which is probably a topic for another day. You do want to get closing line value more often than not. It's not the end all be all, but there are studies that have shown that, if you get closing line value over time, you're probably going to be profitable.
So when we talk about, let's talk about reading lines now, right? Reading the line movement. You said previously, this is pretty easy to find out there how much, a line started here and it has moved 2 or 3 points this way. I will tell you this, and this is something that we'll talk about, I think, in multiple ways on this show. My tendency is to think something and hold on to it with a death grip, regardless of the information in front of me that probably should be changing my mind. That relates to live betting. That relates to reading line movement. And I think part of me would think, okay, if I thought I liked this line, I was going to get a team plus 10. And now I would only get them plus 8. I wouldn't want to bet it because I've lost 2 points of value there. Am I actually reasonable to think that way? Or should I just forget the past and look at what's happening now? Tell me how to read lines and how to fight my inner urgings to believe in myself first and foremost over facts.
So I think you should believe in yourself. If you have a strong conviction about it, about a team or about a situation, hang on to that. But what I would say is I wouldn't get too caught up in the 2 points that you mentioned.
Okay.
Because 2 points from 10 to 8 is a whole lot different than 2 points from, say, 20 to 18, right? So it depends on what numbers you're getting. Again, this goes back to our key number conversation that we've had plenty of times over the years. In the example that you gave, if you are getting them plus 10 and now that plus 10 is gone and it's only plus 8, I personally probably would not bet that. Now, if my number on the game was like 1.5, then I still would, because we're still getting through 3 and through 7. But that plus 10 is so key, and plus eight's kind of a dead number. I probably would not, unless I just had a ton of value on my projected number.
Okay, so then here's the other part of this. There's what I think, what our audience thinks, what you think in your heart. And then there is like what the line is telling you or what the smart people out there are doing. Again, my tendency is to not want to listen to smart people. I don't care what those smart people are doing. I'm smarter than them. Is there such a thing as line movement telling you something? And maybe telling you where the big money or the smart money is, and how much should an average casual gambler pay attention to it?
I think you absolutely should pay attention to it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end all be all. So, for instance, if a line moves a couple of points away from, like in the example you gave, instead of it moving from plus 10 to plus 8, maybe it moves from plus 10 to plus 12. Creating more value on what you thought. And it's like, well, maybe the smart people are betting the other side. I would caution you from always believing that that's the case, because what I've seen a lot of times in college football, in WNBA, in college basketball, across all sports, there are high profile like betting personalities, like a Clay Travis type, for instance. They give out a pick, and because they have such a broad audience, even though they're not, in my opinion, very sharp when it comes to betting, because they give it out and so many people then go right then to bet that game, the sports books take that quick flurry of action and say, oh, there must be something that we didn't know. Let's move the line. So you have to be careful, because not all line movement is sharp people moving the line. Sometimes it's just a loud voice with a huge following that everyone rushes to bet at the same time. And then sportsbooks have to take that and say, oh, we need to move the line because we're getting hit. We're getting hammered here very quickly. Maybe something's going on.
That's the dream, isn't it? Man, if I get to that point, loud voiced, huge following, no knowledge, move a line. Oh, that's when I know I'll have made it. Chishu, come on. When we move a line, brother, we're going to be dancing on this show. Okay. So when we are talking about some of these lines that you can bet now, and if you guys have an app on your phone and you can just, they'll have all the betting lines for week 0 and week 1 are out there. But if you just like keep scrolling, you'll find games that are like, hey, this game's not until September 21st, or this game's not till October 12th. But you can bet some of these games now. Usually it's highly ranked teams or popular teams. You're not going to be able to bet UConn versus Rhode Island week 9. That's not out there now. My instinct of when I think I should maybe bet an early line a couple weeks ahead is tied to if I think something else is going to happen before that game that I think will move the line somewhat substantially. So it's if I have a read on something else, I think, oh, I see an upset coming. So I want to get in on that team now because that team in week 3 is getting 10 points, but I think they're going to have a huge upset in week 1 or 2. And I think by the time we get to the week 3 game, it might only be a 3-point spread instead of a 10-point spread. You know what I mean? Then that's what makes me want to bet early, that there's something else that I think. Does that make sense? Or is there something else that people should take into account if they're considering betting a single game line weeks or maybe even months ahead?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, if you've listened to me for any amount of time, I often make the comparison between sports betting and being like a stock trader, right? And this is the perfect kind of example of that. When you're looking at these games that are weeks away or even months away, you're basically just looking at that as a stock. Like, can I get in early on this before everyone else jumps on it and the line moves 5 points? Like at this juncture, you're literally just you're just going to try to be the CLV king and just get a bunch of closing line value on that game. Because obviously at this point, we don't know anything about these teams other than what preseason metrics like TSI, for instance, are going to tell you. So you're just trying to get ahead of the market. It's really the end game here when you're trying to bet that far in advance.
Okay. Let me give you a specific example of how this worked for me last year. Last year, when Colorado started hot and won its first 3 games, they were looking at a situation where I think their next 2 games were against Oregon and USC after this 3-0 start. And I thought, and then Colorado was the most talked about team in the country. I thought everybody was getting a little too hot on Colorado. So there was an early line on Colorado USC, I think in week 5, that I wound up betting USC at something like only -10 against Colorado. And I was like, man, I'm getting the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. I think Colorado will have cooled off by then. I think it's around where I got them. By the time it got to the actual game, because Colorado got boat raced by Oregon in week 4, USC was -21 in that game. I got it. I knew I had at least a touchdown extra value. I think maybe 2 touchdowns of extra value with the bet that I made early. And I was like, I am a genius. I nailed it. This is the best thing I've ever done. Instead of USC -21, I have USC -10, and USC won by 7. And so I did it exactly right. I gained 11 points of closing line value, and I still lost the bet. So that's why I'm quitting this show right now and I'm leaving. Good luck, Tishu.
That is just such the epitome of betting. Like, you can do everything right. Like, you nailed that from a process standpoint. You nailed that. And then, I mean, sometimes it just doesn't come home. But if you remember that game in particular, USC was killing Colorado early. So I bet you first half, you were probably like, yeah, baby, this is in the bag. And then Colorado makes a crazy second half comeback because of the Alex Grinch defense. But yeah, no, and that's a lot of times I tell people, focus on the process. Like, at the end of the day, this is sports, and there's going to be like crazy stuff happen. And sometimes it doesn't work out, like in this case, but you did everything right from a sports betting standpoint, like reading the textbook. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. And that's what we're trying to teach you to do is understand the process, not so much the result of any one bet or even, handful of bets.
For someone who is constantly wrong, there's nothing quite like being right and still losing money. I will tell you, brother. I almost rather just be completely wrong and lose money than be right and lose money. So let's get specific on a couple things. Actually, let me ask you one more generic question. Are you most interested? You said you don't do a ton of betting like this. Are you more interested if your numbers are just telling you something different than the line, and you just think maybe the line, the public line, will catch up to you in a couple weeks? Is that what would drive you, as opposed to trying to think to yourself, well, I think there's some particular results that I think might happen? Because maybe it's just like the line is maybe kind of wrong right now just because it's early. Is that what would interest you if your numbers are way different from where a line is?
Yeah, and it really just varies team to team. Like, for instance, Oklahoma State comes to mind in that type of scenario, because that's a team that, like, a lot of guys I respect are really high on them, but like my numbers, despite my every trying to give them benefit of the doubt, could not get there. So like, that's a team that I'm like, okay, my numbers are pretty different from the market on that team. I'm kind of curious over the first week or two. Let's see what happens with them. Do I need to adjust, or can I kind of get a sense that, hey, I'm ahead now? Let me look and see down the road if I can capitalize on that, in a week 10 game or something like that here early in the season.
Okay. Can I ask you one more thing that's a generic question? I know people want to get the specifics, but there are times, right, when if you make a bet with an online app and the line moves somewhat substantially, they'll offer like a cash out option that you can cash out before the game is even played and make money just because the line has moved that much. That you might have bet $5 and the line moved, and now the app will say, like, if you want to cash this bet out for $5.61 right now, go ahead and do that, because like you were just right on the line. It would, like, if I had done that last year, it's like I could have cashed out. Well, the line moved 11 points, just cash out on that. Is there anything like in the process of accruing a bankroll and doing things the right way? Should you take the free money? It's only 61 cents, but it's like an 11% profit or something for doing nothing. Are there times when you should just take that? Or should you be more interested in like, well, I feel like I'm in a good spot for my actual bet?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong general answer there. I think a couple of things would play into that. One, like, is there a reason the line moves so much? Like, is the other team's quarterback hurt? And now you're like, well,
Yep.
now I feel really good about it. I'm just going to let it ride. Or, if you don't quite have that much of a handle on it and you feel like, hey, I just made a good bet. They're offering me guaranteed profit. Let me just cash out. I think both of those are perfectly viable options. I mean, as they say, you're not going to go broke taking profit. So
Yeah.
I don't think there's a generally right or wrong answer there. I think it just depends on your risk tolerance and just depending on the situation. Like I said, maybe a key injury or something like that drove the line move.
Okay. All right. Let's get to a couple specific games. One, this came up in a discussion that sort of made me want to do this show. Week 2, Texas at Michigan. This line is only 3.5 right now. Texas in week 1 hosts Colorado State. Michigan hosts Fresno State. Fresno State's a little bit of a live group of 5 team. They did just lose their head coach who had to retire sort of unexpectedly, but there was a time when I thought Fresno State had a chance to maybe be the group of 5 representative in the playoff. 3.5 seems low to me for Texas. So my instinct on this would to be not to bet this right now, because I think there's a chance that Texas rolls Colorado State in week 1. Michigan might look a little clunky with a new quarterback, and if Fresno State's decent, and that game might be close. And I think this line maybe could move to more like 7.5 by week 1. So if you like Michigan, I would say take Michigan now, that you're only giving. No, that's reversed.
Yeah,
if
backwards.
you like
take Texas, yeah.
If you like Texas, take Texas now at -3.5, because I think it might get to a touchdown by the time we actually get to the week of the game. If you like Michigan, wait. I think I like Texas here, and my instinct is to bet this early because I think we could see a move of a couple points on the line. What do you think of this idea, and what do your numbers have for Texas, Michigan right now?
So first, I think the interesting thing here is looking at both of these teams' week 1 games. The line has moved against both of these teams. The Fresno State line opened at 22.5. I believe it's down to 21, even 20.5 at some spots. It's kind of teetered. And Texas opened, I think, as 36.5, and that's down to like 32. So the line has moved against both these teams in week 1. Maybe the public's, guys are anticipating a look ahead spot type situation. And then this game in particular opened Texas -4.5, and has seen some Michigan money drive the line down to 3.5. My numbers are right in lockstep. I'm at Texas -3.5. But
Okay.
I agree with what you said. I think if you like Texas, I mean, just looking at the spreads from those first 2 games really, should tell you kind of how those games might go. I'm with you. I think if you like Texas, now would probably be the time to buy. If you like Michigan, you can probably get a better number the week of the game. So it just depends on which side you like, because like I said, there's no number value based on my projections.
Okay. How much do you think a line can move in a situation like this? Could this line move 4 points based off week 1 results, or does it feel like that would be, because that would move through a key number, right? Like
Right.
the idea that it goes from 3.5 to 7.5. Is that possible, or is that like lines don't move that much?
I mean, I don't want to say it's not possible, because if Texas goes out and loses to Colorado State, like, it's going to move 4 points. But anything short of that, like if Texas just comes out and wins by 24 or something like that, I mean, you're maybe looking at a 2.5 point swing. I would be surprised, barring something just crazy happening in one of those 2 games. I would be surprised if we see this get to a full touchdown.
Okay.
But certainly I could see Texas, maybe -5.5, maybe -6, depending on how those 2 games go.
Okay. I think
'Cause
Michigan's going to be good.
one point, sorry, one point that I do want to make: odds makers, from the analysis that I've done, odds makers generally are pretty slow. Like their preseason priors, like how they have teams power rated right now, they're very slow to come off of that. So
Okay.
these early season results don't really influence the line as much as you may think, or any individual game isn't going to influence the line as much as you may think. It obviously has an impact, but odds makers are typically pretty slow to come off of their preseason ratings. Whereas my numbers, I think I adjust mine a little bit faster, which is, part of trying to beat the market.
Okay. Interesting. All right. I'm interested in Texas -3.5. I might hit that now. Another week 2 game that interests me, Iowa State +2.5 at Iowa. Now, especially that Kirk Ferentz is suspended for the first game of the year for Iowa. I'm thinking I might hit Iowa State at +2.5 now, because I'm also wondering, without Kirk Ferentz and with some uncertainty at the quarterback situation, Iowa's not going to lose to Illinois State in week 1. But if I wonder if Iowa could look a little rough in a way that moves this line closer to a pick 'em. And I'd rather get Iowa State +2.5 right now. I might even buy the half point to get to Iowa State +3 on that. What do your numbers say about Iowa State, Iowa right now? What do you think of it as an early bet?
Yeah, I've got Iowa -4 projected in this game. Again, interesting that looking at these week 1 lines, Iowa opened as a 26.5 point favorite over Illinois State. That's been bet down to 23.5. So the market moving against Iowa in week 1. So, take that for what it's worth. Sometimes the market gets teams that it just doesn't like, and you can kind of see a trend of where they're going to go. The line's going to move toward or away from that team on a consistent basis. If that holds true, then what you're saying is true, and you're going to be able to get Iowa State. Then Iowa State now would be the time to get in, because that line is going to move against Iowa. The interesting thing here, I project this total at 26.5. So I'm going to be way more interested in the total here, because I would find it hard to believe they're going to open a total in the 20s, even in the low 30s. Like, this total may open like 35.5 or something. And I will be interested in getting an under on even a number that low.
Okay. So that's good advice. Like, as soon as people see that total drop for that week 2 game, be ready to maybe hit that before that moves, especially if it's maybe going to be 6 or 7 points higher than what you're projecting. Hit that under. Another week 2 game that you were interested in, Tennessee -4.5 at North Carolina State. This game, I think, has potential playoff implications. But what is it that made you curious about looking at this one already for a week 2 game?
Yeah, this is one that I kind of had circled even early in the summer when I did my kind of preliminary preseason ratings. At one point, I had Tennessee favored by 10 in this game. I came a little bit closer to market. I'm at Tennessee -7.5. Most books are at 4.5 right now, but Caesars, which is what I would consider one of the sharper, like, recreational books, they generally will move their lines based on what some of the sharper books offshore do. Caesars is already out to -6 on this game. So I think this game's going to end up being, Tennessee's going to end up being favored by a touchdown in this game. So, if you agree with my numbers here and you like Tennessee, I would get them sooner than later.
Okay. 4.5 right now, still out there at, I think, multiple spots. So that might be one you want to hit now. And Nico Iamaleava is going to be a guy, the Tennessee sophomore quarterback, that people are going to think is cool. And I think people are going to want to bet on Tennessee. So he played in the bowl game last year, but week 1 against Chattanooga, if there's highlights on ESPN of giant string bean Nico running around and looking like a future top 5 draft pick, people might want to be on the Tennessee side there. So get them now. Another week 2 game, Colorado, Nebraska. Colorado is +6.5. And I will tell you this, I think I'm going to pick North Dakota State to beat Colorado in week 1. And so that's like a 9.5 point spread right now. Based on that, if you like Nebraska, take Nebraska now, giving less than a touchdown, because if Colorado's coming off a loss and Dylan Raiola keeps reminding people of Patrick Mahomes in the opener, this is one that I think could move through that number. And if you can get Nebraska for less than a touchdown now, I would move on that.
Yeah, and this is one. So I project Nebraska -6, which I believe is where the line was. I think it has moved a half point towards Nebraska. So they're -6.5 now. So, but again, the difference between 6 and 6.5 is nothing. So we're basically saying my number is right in line with the market here. But I'm with you. So I've only got Colorado as a 7-point favorite in week 1 against North Dakota State. If that game is close, or if North Dakota State wins, like you're saying, I definitely agree that this line is going to go through a touchdown. So we're in agreement here. If you like Nebraska, now's the time to buy before it hits 7.
Okay. Week 3, Alabama at Wisconsin. I sort of just wanted to talk about this one. I'm not sure what would happen to change much. Bama plays Western Kentucky and South Florida. Wisconsin plays Western Michigan and South Dakota before this game. I think I'm going to be at this game. It's just a huge game for North versus South here on Kings of the North. I'm just kind of curious where you are on Bama, Wisconsin right now with the general consensus at Bama -9.
Yeah, I've got Alabama -11. So, only a 2-point difference, but, we're talking about a key number here of 10. So if you like Alabama, if you agree with my numbers, I would probably get them. Just in general, how the market operates, I would anticipate this number climbing through 10. Just the general public they're going to bet Alabama against Wisconsin just on name recognition alone, So I would be on Alabama here -9.
Okay. Another Bama game, week 5, Georgia at Alabama. Georgia is -4.5 right now. You're trying to bet jerseys at this point because this is not Nick Saban, Alabama. This is Kalen DeBoer, Alabama. I am less enthused about Georgia than most people. Where are you on this Georgia-Bama line at the moment? And I'm just curious, like what you think could potentially affect this, because I think it's possible that either Bama or Georgia isn't quite what people think in the first month of the year before this week 5 game, but I'm not sure how to read it. Where do you have this game right now?
Yeah, I've got Georgia -3. So, I would be intrigued at Alabama +4.5 because, again, even though it's only a 1.5 difference, you're getting you're getting 3.5, you're getting 4, which is a secondary key number, and you're even getting, the hook on that at 4.5. I like that. As far as what may influence this line, I'm kind of with you. I think my numbers, again, even though I have Georgia #2, like by a hair in my ratings, I think I am just a little bit lower overall than the consensus on Georgia, just as far as their team strength. So I won't be surprised to see this come down. So I think Alabama would be the play here at 3.5 or better.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, sitting here now, I think Bama's going to win this game, but to get more than 3, I think people might cool on Georgia a little bit, and that this line, could come down to under 3 by the time we get to the game. So if you get it at 4.5, maybe take that. All right, a couple more. Ohio State, Oregon. Ohio State +1 at Oregon in week 7. Where's your read on this at the moment?
Yeah, I'm right in line with the market. I've got Oregon -1 at home against Ohio State. A true toss-up game. Pretty much all throughout my ratings updates throughout the summer, I've pretty much had between Ohio State -1 to Oregon -1. So I mean, I don't have a strong play on that either way. Very excited to see it. I know it got announced as a night game on NBC, so it's going to be one of, if not the best games of the college football season. So I'm looking forward to it, but I don't at the moment have any strong opinion on it.
Do you think it's possible that Ohio State, with a pretty early, easy schedule, they do play Iowa the week before Oregon, could come out and blow the doors off people and get to a point where by week 7, this is more like Ohio State -3 on the road? There's a part of me that thinks if you are somebody who's interested in betting Ohio State and you think they're going to be good, maybe get Ohio State now, because they might be the favorite on the road by the time we get to mid-October.
Yeah, I don't know what I think about where this line's going to go, because I could kind of argue either way. On one side, Ohio State's probably the more public team, generally speaking. So you generally would expect to see more action come in on Ohio State, potentially see the line move towards them. But then on the other hand, there are a lot of people. I saw one guy that I have a lot of respect for from a power rating standpoint. He has Oregon #1 in the country. So this might be one of those games where a lot of the sharp guys are putting money on Oregon, and then everybody else is putting it on Ohio State. So I don't really know what I think this line is going to do. I could see it going either way, honestly. I really, this is one of the few games that I really don't have much of an opinion on all the way around right now.
And you're also allowed just to watch football and enjoy it and not place a bet on it. So this might be one of those. It's going to be a banger. You don't have to have a little extra juice on Ohio State, Oregon to want to sit down at 7:30 on a Saturday night and take this one in. So
we'll see what that first quarter line looks like. But
yeah, that's right. Just wait. We're going to talk about best bets here in a second. Just wait. If you have not experienced the Tyler Shoemaker Ohio State first quarter bet, it is a thing to behold. So stay tuned. Two more I want to talk about. Again, like public money on this. It's another Colorado game. Kansas State -6.5 at Colorado. This is in week 8. I just think it's possible by week 8 that everybody realizes Kansas State is a significantly better team than Colorado. And I would not be surprised to see this line move through 10. I think Kansas State's going to be really good. I think people are going to be enamored with Avery Johnson, their quarterback. I think Colorado might be okay, but not be in like the midst of a rebound season. So I'm interested in Colorado State -6.5 right now. Where do you have this?
The funny thing is you did not see my projections before this show, but you nailed it. I've got Kansas State -10.5 here.
Okay.
I 100% agree with everything you just said. As a matter of fact, like listening to you talk about that and me just kind of looking at the numbers here, like I think I'm going to bet this. I think Kansas State under a touchdown, even though it's on the road, I think they're going to be significantly better than Colorado. And like you said, this line, even potentially as early as week 2, if the Colorado North Dakota State game goes the way we think it might, this line is going to be north of 7, maybe by week 2. So I think Kansas State -6.5 now would be the play if you want to get involved in this game.
All right. And last one, I'm just curious, you can probably find a line on 2027 Ohio State, Michigan at this point. They just want to take people's money on Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan, defending national champs, +9.5 at Ohio State right now. You could have made a lot of money the last 3 years betting early lines on Ohio State, Michigan, because this is often where this sits. Ohio State wins the offseason, and then Michigan the last 3 years has won the season. What do your numbers say right now about Ohio State and Michigan?
I've got Ohio State -12.5. I'm surprised that this is 9.5. I think at one point I did see a 10 somewhere this summer. So, maybe that's some Michigan money pushing that under 10. I think it's more likely that this number goes in favor of Ohio State than it is that the line goes towards Michigan, because I think there's a chance Michigan goes 9-3 or 8-4. And I just think, especially with Ohio State's non-conference schedule, I think by the time this game comes around, I think this game is going to be north of 10, probably closer to 2 touchdowns than it is. It's way more likely that's going to be the case than it is, going to be 7.5 or 8 at that point. From where I sit right now in August, I guess we'll see. But I would take Ohio State -9.5 now if you want to get an early bet on the game.
Yeah, this is not guaranteeing that Ohio State's going to beat Michigan, but I have a hard time believing this line moves away from Ohio State. Like the idea that this would be Ohio State at home -6.5 by the time we get to this game, given Ohio State's easier schedule, given the games that Michigan has to play, it might be a good idea to not bet on Ohio State regarding Michigan at all until they prove they can beat Michigan again. So I totally understand sitting that out. But if you are someone who likes Ohio State or is interested in Ohio State, I think it might be worth it, if you want to bet them, to hit it now, because the chances of this getting to over 10, and this is one of those, again, at home in Columbus, Ohio State wouldn't even have to play a great game or dominate Michigan to win by 10. Like you win one of the, your Ohio State's up by 3 and Michigan's driving at the end of the game and they got stopped on 4th down and Ohio State gets the ball back and scores with 2 minutes left and wins 38-28. And in this situation, Ohio State, you win that bet, even though it's a close game. So that's the only thing I would say on this. If you like the Buckeyes, now might be the time.
Well, and one other point here before we close that out. These two teams, just generally stylistically, Ohio State is much more like power rating friendly than Michigan is, because Ohio State is going to, in the games that they're going to, win comfortably, they're going to blow the doors off of people. And the games that Michigan is going to win comfortably, that might, this year especially, that might look like 24-3. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think from a power rating standpoint, Ohio State's style of play is going to lead to maybe a bigger gap from a power rating standpoint than some other teams that may be similar in terms of how good they actually are, but the way the stats are going to be, kind of broken up between these two teams. I think it's much more likely Ohio State's going to be a bigger favorite by the time the game rolls around. For that reason, even if the records are similar.
Yeah. Okay, those are 9 games we wanted to talk about. a week from now, when you tune in on Friday mornings and find Bets of the North, we will be making picks for actual games that are happening that weekend. So this was like our last little preview before the season. We have a quick announcement about that, but you had some stuff about live betting, T-Shoe. I have another horror story about this. Like my greatest live betting experience is being the only time I've been in Las Vegas for the NCAA basketball tournament was the year that 1 seed Virginia lost to 16 seed UMBC. And I was running to the window to live bet Virginia. I probably live bet Virginia 9 times in that game.
I was at that game and I was doing the same.
It's like I'm now at the point where I'm getting a 1 seed plus 11 or something. And it's like, how can I not take this? Sprinting to the window and then setting all those tickets on fire. I am terrible at live betting because I think everything that happens, I start the game with what I think, and then everything that happens against me, I just assume is more opportunity for me to double down on what I thought before because the tide's going to turn and I'm going to be right in the end. And so I start off with a bet of some team -7. And now that team's down 14-0 in the first quarter. And I'm like, this is my opportunity. Now I'm getting that same team +4.5 that I got a -7 before the game. This is perfect. I'm going to win every way. And I wind up losing every way on top of myself because I only live bet if the game goes opposite of what I thought at the beginning. Then I bet more on what I originally thought. I do not let the current game influence my opinion. Does that mean people like me should not live bet? Because just be wrong once. You had the wrong pick before the game. Don't then be wrong 4 more times as you wait to be correct. Because I never live bet the other way. Just tell me if I should stay away, I should stay away. I'm doing live betting exactly wrong, right?
So there are 2 ways to live bet. There's that way, which is you have your prior, whether it's your gut feeling, you're using a number like mine, or even if you just want to use the pregame betting line and say, okay, this team was favored by 7 coming into the game. They're down 10-0 now. Now they're whatever -2 or whatever. You can approach it that way, or like you said, the flip side is you can say, okay, this team was favored by 7, or this team's a 7-point underdog, but now they're up 10-0. I'm gonna hit them because they clearly are the better team early. I'm with you, Doug. I prefer to use my prior number, my prior gut feeling, the pregame line as kind of my guiding light here, or especially early in games, first quarters in particular. Really, I think halftime is probably my cutoff point of like, okay, it's the third quarter and this 7-point favorite's down by 14. Like, I'm just gonna stand pat. But if it's the first quarter, especially first drive live betting, like the team that's favored gives up a touchdown on the first drive and now they're down 7-0, and now you can get them -5 or something like that. Again, key numbers, keeping those in mind. That's my personal strategy. I've found success with that, not only in football but in other sports. I think that's the way to go. I don't know that there's a right or wrong, but I personally prefer to do your method of like, okay, I had this opinion coming in. You have to understand a few possessions or even a quarter or 2 quarters is such a small sample size that there's going to be higher variance in those small periods that you would expect to normalize over the course of 4 quarters or 2 halves, depending on the sport. But yeah, I'm with you. I think you're doing it right, and that's how I approach it.
Doesn't work. It doesn't work. I'm bad at it. Okay, so once again, right strategy, wrong result. Welcome to Betting with Doug. So that is, I think you have to be able to differentiate. It's much better if you're watching the game. It is. I know that it's tempting to just be like, see a score come up and be like, oh, let's live bet that. It's like, well, you actually maybe have no idea what's happening. But when it's stuff that's just normal, or when it's stuff that's like abnormal in your way, that's like you bet a 10-point favorite, and a quarterback threw a perfect pass and it tipped off the guy's hand and the other team caught it and ran it back for a pick six in the first quarter, that, like, that's not going to be replicated. That's not indicative of the fact that that team's actually better, but it might move the line 3 points based on what it was before the game. Like that kind of thing, I think you can jump on, or just a normal, hey, they march down the field. How often have you seen a lesser team score on a first drive, the defensive coordinator adjusts, and then that team never scores again? Maybe you can get a little advantage there. So, right, if it's normal, hey, it's just game flow. Sometimes you can catch the middle of a game flow before it tips back the other way and get a point or two edge somewhere. Or just turn off the game, make a bet. This is the other option. Make a bet, close your eyes, curl up like a fetus, sleep for 16 hours, wake up and see who won. And then that way you can only lose once. That's also a live betting strategy. The game is live, but you pretend you're dead. That's a strategy.
That is a strategy, yes.
But you like live betting? Are you very aware on a college football Saturday? Are you keeping tabs on multiple games and being very aware and looking for edges?
Yes. Honestly, I hope to do a better job of like not doing that this year, because in years past, I've like sat and obsessively looked at scores, especially like, at noon Eastern, we know games are kicking off. So, first drives are happening. So that first, 30 minutes is like prime time to get some live bets. So I'm going to try to like not be a psychopath about it, but yes, and generally I am checking the scores and try to find some opportunities.
Okay. All right. Last thing before we go, we do have a special announcement here on Bets of the North. We are going to be betting real money this year. We are going to put money where our mouths are. And we are doing this through a generous donation from our owner here at Kings of the North. I mean, just as a company, we've decided we want to do this. And what we're going to do as a company is have a $5,000 bankroll, and we're going to give at least $5,000 to charity at the end of the year. But what Tishu and I are going to do is, through the course of the season, use this $5,000 bankroll and try to grow it. And then if we end up with more than $5,000, then that money will go to charity. So we're not keeping any of it, but our company is making this investment. We think it will make it fun. We're going to find a worthy charity for that money. It's not for us to win money, but it's to like confirm that we're not just like throwing stuff out there. So what our plan will be is, each Friday on this show, we will have best bets. Tishu will have some, I will have a couple, but in the end, we will combine and agree on one best bet, the best bet of the week, and we will bet $500 on that. And then we will find some other bet with at least plus odds. Maybe it's a parlay, maybe it's an underdog money line, and bet $50 or $100 on that. And we will make those two real money bets. We will show you guys the bet. We will track the bankroll, and we'll make it more than just two guys shouting into a microphone, Tishu.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really excited about that. It's going to be really fun. It's a good cause, obviously. So I'm happy to be a part of it, and hopefully we can double that bankroll.
But the good thing is, I did not want to create a scenario where we were losing money and taking food out of the mouths of hungry people through my incompetence. So we've set a threshold, right? It's like, oh, did you hear what Doug did? Well, they were going to give $5,000 to a hospital. Now they're giving $74.23 because he's so bad at this. It's like, no, we're not doing that. We're only trying to grow it. So we're excited about that, but it makes it real. It's going to be real, and we're really going to do it here on the show. And mostly it'll be on you. Like, I'll nod, but you'll be like the best bet. And I'll be like, yeah, that sounds good. So credit when we hit, credit to Tishu. When we miss, blame on me, which is
I'm good. I'm good with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. That's life. That's life here at the corner of Kramit Boulevard and Math Street, which is what the alternate name of this show is. All right. That's it for Bets of the North. We will catch you back here next Friday morning and every Friday morning through the course of the season, where we will be suggesting best bets for college football and making a couple ourselves. Thanks as always to our producer, Mike Urostowski, for making us look good and sound good. For Tyler Shoemaker at the T-Shoe Index, I am Doug Lesmerises, and that was Bets of the North.